So welcome one and all. So glad we're exploring together. And we always begin with just a few minutes of quiet time. We live in a society that really supports doing. It is so powerful to begin to just relax into this moment. And so I invite you to close your eyes and to just notice what sits here right now. Just notice, is the body comfortable? Is it uncomfortable? Is the mind busy? It doesn't want to settle down, or is it glad to settle down? Are your emotions all over the place? Are they very quiet? Just dipping the finger of our attention into the river of our experience. Mostly the mind is not used to doing this. So I invite you to notice your breath. Just notice, how do you know that breath is happening? So this requires bringing your attention into your immediate experience. Do you notice the rising, the falling of your breath, mainly in your chest? Or is it more down in your belly? Do your shoulders move when you breathe? Do your arms move when you breathe? And if so, how far down into your arms does that movement go? Just being curious, investigating our immediate experience. And because our minds are so busy, it can be very helpful to use your breath to calm down that always becoming place, to make it easier to actually be present for our own experience. So I invite you, like we did last time, to allow a deep in-breath and tighten every single muscle you can find. And then on the out-breath, slowly let that holding go. And again, tighten. You're exaggerating the chronic holding you carry around all day long. And then you're resetting it by slowly letting go on the out breath. And again, tighten. And now add the great sound of letting go. Ah, such a powerful sound. Then again, tighten. And then, And now, notice your breath again. Allow it to be as it wants to be, but just notice it. Notice this amazing river of breath that has been moving through you every single moment of your life. And how many of those breaths have you been aware of? Become aware of it. Rising and falling. Rising and opening you from the inside. And letting go, relaxing on the out breath. And just for a few moments, have your attention fully here in the rising and the falling of your breath, or in your mind that doesn't want to do this. That's okay. But be curious about the mind that is resisting being present for yourself using breath as your anchor. I now thank life for inviting you into the actual living experience of your life. And when you're ready, open your eyes. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. So here we are. I mean, I said this last week, but it is really profound when you begin to contemplate the title of this conversation: healing and being healed by our compulsions. If that doesn't blow your mind, I don't know what will. And so we are exploring a radical shift, not only in our relationship to compulsions, but our whole relationship to ourselves and to life. And so last week we began to lay that foundation, this really understanding that compulsions are a finely crafted survival system. And just like the body, if it gets cold, it shivers, or if you get hot, you sweat. Compulsions are a part of that urge towards survival. What do? Well, we looked at that we come in 3 layers, and the top layer is this addiction to control that we have all been trained in, conditioned into. And in the second layer are all the disowned parts of ourselves, all the parts that when we were very young and this conditioned self was being created, that we decided this was not an okay part of us. And we talked about how, we could hear the message, big girls don't cry, or don't be angry at me, or oh, you're such a sissy. Why are you afraid of the next door neighbor's dog? So we put in this second layer, holding it, trapping these feelings, but really what they are is our joy. It is our free-flowing aliveness that got trapped inside of us through holding. I was talking to somebody yesterday that is going through a lot of stress and a lot of stress. And he says, the worst thing about it is that I think I have to have a back surgery again because my back just aches all the time. And I asked him to just notice, what's your breath like? We did this amazing exploration, and he began to realize that he holds his breath most all the time. In fact, he had seen this before on his tennis racket. He has written the word breathe, but he still doesn't breathe. He holds his breath. It was just an astounding moment for him to finally not try to override it with, now I have to breathe, but to really see how much he held his breath and how much the diaphragm is connected into your back, and it makes such a difference. So what happened to him, really for the first time in his life, he began to investigate what he was experiencing rather than trying to change it. That's the radical shift that we are exploring. And that's not what the top layer is about. The top layer is about getting to the good stuff and getting rid of the bad stuff. And you can get to the end of your life in that mode and then say, what was this all about? Or something is calling you into this conversation that is beginning to explore the phenomenal power of being curious about what is going on rather than trying to control it. Now, I can't tell you how many people have said to me, they've read the book or they've downloaded the class, I have a video class, on the compulsion work. And the first thing I hear if I work with them individually or they email me this, they say, how do you do this? I don't know how to do this. So it's really important to understand that we left ourselves a long time ago and we live in our heads. And it's just so evident we can see with compulsions that is always been our head that has been trying to fix them, get rid of them, stop them, analyze them, understand them. And the statistics show it doesn't work. You know, it's the US Surgeon General, 98% of every pound that is lost in the US is gained back within a year and a half plus some. And I saw a statistic yesterday, and I was going to go see if I could find it this morning, and I didn't have time, but they were saying that in 1997, 38% of people in the US were overweight. And last year, 54%, somewhere around that. So the key, that 98% that is, lost is gained back plus some. Control doesn't work. In fact, what you try to control absolutely controls you. I call it the dandelion principle. I'm a big gardener, and I didn't know this when I first started gardening. A lot of dandelions would come up, and I would just kind of halfway, pull off the greens and try to dig out the root. Well, if you leave the little tiny itty bitty bit of a root way down deep inside, the dandelion will grow again. It's the same thing with our compulsions. In fact, I was told once that there is a recovery center in the Midwest, that they are considered one of the better recovery centers in the United States because their success rate is 17%. How we've been with compulsions not only doesn't work, but it actually empowers them. So I'm going to do my best not to give you too many how-tos, because what we're doing here is we are exploring the basic skills of how to heal and be healed by our compulsions. And it's so easy for the mind to hear these skills and start trying to apply them. And if you watch very carefully, your mind is trying to apply them to get this to stop. And I don't think there's anybody that can go through this process of coming back to themselves and coming back to life without going through that phase. But I'm going to try not to feed that too much. And what we're going to be doing now together is really learning these basic skills and how to begin to cultivate them in our daily life. If you try to take them too early into your compulsions, they will just take them over. Compulsion is it's a very strong force. We have been trained to try to get away from what we don't like, of what is uncomfortable, and get to what we do like. And so that's why we did this thing with just noticing our breath. When was the last time you noticed a breath? Really noticed a breath? Really experienced your breath? What we're going to be exploring today is the art of investigation. Rather than trying to control your life, it's discovering this phenomenal power of your own attention to bring forth healing in places that you couldn't even imagine that healing could happen. And so, as many of you know, I was, I drank copious amounts of alcohol, took every drug I could get my hands on, and ate every single bit of food I could get my hands on and once gained 97 pounds in a year. And then my first teacher taught me, in the seeing is the movement. There was nothing inside of me I needed to control or fix or even understand. It was the art of beginning to investigate, to see that when my attention and my immediate experience come together, it's called alchemy. It's the place where the bound up energy or energies in that second layer that fuel our compulsions can begin to let go on their own. And my experience of working with other people for all these years is that then compulsions begin to look uninteresting. It isn't that you stop them. It's just that you are more interested in being present for yourself and life rather than turning away from yourself and life, which is one of my definitions of compulsions. My other definition is the art of something that is recurring, that we use to manage our experience over which we have little or no control. But I want you to really take in that the core of compulsions is about turning away. We don't know how to be with ourselves. We don't know how to be with all the stuff that we have stuffed inside. So today are going to look at the phenomenal power of your own attention. So we don't pay attention. We don't. We think we do, but we don't. We are always kind of hydroplaning through life and trying to get to a better place. And so there was this study done in written about in the Washington Post a few years ago. And there was a psychologist from West Virginia and somebody else from Harvard. I can't remember their names. But what they did with people is that they put them in a room that had absolutely no stimulation. It had a table and a chair, no window, no music, no iPhone, no book, nothing. And they put them in there for 15 minutes. And the only thing that they had was a button that could shock themselves. So they were seeing what people did when they weren't distracted, when here all there is life. And 70% of the men shock themselves over and over again. It was a lesser percentage for the women, and I can't remember, what that is right now. But isn't that interesting that we don't know how to be present for our own life? And I saw yesterday, I just laughed, that in CBS this morning, they did this thing with John Dickerson. He's one of the new hosts there. And they had him on a Saturday, which is his day off. They filmed him. They came into his home, and he had some writing to do, and he wanted to, play his guitar a bit. And they showed him. He would start writing, and then his phone would beep. There was a text. He went to his phone 86 times. He would start a project and then back to his phone. And so you could see so clearly this, God, it's just crazy making, how we live our lives. And then they did a day where this phone was taken away. And he said at the end of the day when he was talking to the person that was, in charge of this grand experiment, he was really uncomfortable all day long. He had become addicted to distracting himself. The power of compulsions is that they won't be healed as long as we distract ourselves, try to get away from them, and or try to control them. So this basic skill of learning how to really have your mind, your body, your heart all here at the same time. It's like a muscle. It's weak in most people. We just tumble from one thought to another, one feeling to another, one text or message, on our phone. We just tumble through our lives. And I love the quote by Alan Watts, the very beloved Zen teacher who is now passed. No matter how many times you say the word water, it will never be wet. So we think about life, and then our compulsions come because we don't know how to be present for ourselves, and they try to stuff all this, and then we try to control our compulsions, and then we get caught in this place of despair and self-judgment and what's wrong with me. You are not responsible for your compulsions. Your compulsions are a finely crafted survival system that you need as long as you can't be present for yourself. Life is asking you to be responsible to your compulsions, to begin to listen. So, this is one of the most powerful healing tools available to a human being. The power of your own curious, investigative attention. There's two other skills. We'll be talking about those later on, in the class. But today we're talking about attention. Have you ever been with a baby, and you begin to give them the light of your attention, and they light up like a Christmas tree. It's just so amazing. And having done a lot of work with people's childhood, which is where this conditioned self is created, I began to really realize this years ago, that we needed attention in order to survive. If you've read the book, there is this study of the baby rhesus monkeys. I think I may have talked about it last week, but God, such a cruel study. They took the babies away from their mothers at birth and put them in cages all by themselves and gave them the choice of two surrogate mothers. If they chose one, they couldn't have the other. And one was a wire form monkey with a bottle, and one was a cloth monkey that you could cuddle. And 100% of the time, the babies chose the cloth monkey. We need attention in order to survive. And our attention is now, we keep on spending our lives trying to get the attention out there. The attention that happens when you fall in love. Oh my God, your whole world changes. You're just light as air. Of course, then the relationship eventually changes. So we look out there, we're constantly searching for this magic elixir of attention, not knowing that it is our attention that we long for. Attention is so powerful that you can be on a bus and And if you look in a very focused way at the back of a head of somebody, if they're not, don't have earphones on and they're not, looking at their phone, but somebody that is just sitting there, the chances are greater than not that they will turn around. They will feel the light of your attention. Wow. I have learned, when I first started seeing people individually, I wanted to, give people all this information and everything. And I still do that at times. But I began to realize that what was the most powerful thing I could do was give them my undivided, accepting attention. The example I like to use is that you have a bad day and you go to your friend, and your friend does with you what you usually do with you when you are uncomfortable or hurting. She judges you. Oh my God, not again. I've heard this way too many times. Or she tries to fix you. Well, if only you'd done this, then you wouldn't be in this pickle again. Or she just ignores you. She turns away from you. That's what we do with ourselves. But if you go to a friend that has learned the powerful art of paying attention to what is right now, doesn't say anything, you talk for 15, 20 minutes, all of a sudden you feel better. Why is that? Because you have received the phenomenal power of focused, accepting attention. And oh my God, we so deeply long for this from ourselves, but we don't know how to do that. We're just so used to trying to figure things out and fix things and understand things and get rid of things and rise above things and outrun things. It's a little bit like the bear in the woods. Here in the Northwest, you get training, at REI before you go out to backpack. And, when I was younger, I used to do a lot of backpacking, and they train you that if you meet a bear in the woods, don't run away. The bear will just run after you. You're supposed to turn and then slowly, if you can, get your jacket off and slowly raise it so you become bigger and you're just standing there. What we do is that we run away from our compulsions so the bear chases us. And we run away through our compulsions from all the uncomfortableness in that second layer, our feeling of never having been enough, or our feeling of being less than everybody else, or our feeling of being terrified of life, or our feeling of this loneliness that we all carry, or the feeling of deep despair. I can't tell you how many people said, well, I can't take my attention into my despair because I'll start crying and I will never stop. And I do not recommend going into something like deep despair right away. You won't have the strength of attention in order to be with the despair rather than fall into it or run away from it. So what we're talking about today is strengthening the muscle of your curiosity or attention or your investigative ability, that it's very flaccid. It just tumbles from one experience to another and one thought to another. And we need to develop it. We need to strengthen it. I highly recommend that you don't at the beginning take this into your compulsions or into any really deep feelings that are fueling them. You need to spend time developing this. Believe you me, it is one of the most powerful things that you can discover. And it's something that we're also afraid of. You know, that whole top layer was created with this idea that I have to get away from what I don't like inside of me or I will die. And that's true when you were young. You could have died of heartache or died of fear or died of endless rage. And so my job is to show you how to strengthen that muscle of attention so that you can begin, just like we did with our breath, to be present for what you are actually experiencing. So let me give you an example. So I was raised in terror, not fear, but terror. And real true rejection. My father wanted a boy because he was in competition with his brother for this family name. And I was the second child. The first was a girl. I was a girl. And then his brother had a child, his first child, 2 months after I was born. And it was a boy. So I lived for 12 years with this man who never spoke to me once. Not once. He had nothing, absolutely nothing to do with me. And then when we had to start going on the weekends, when I was 12, to spend the weekends with him, that was when the sexual abuse began. And so no wonder, I mean, I didn't know how to be with this kind of heartache. I didn't know how to be with a mother that was a true paranoid. I didn't need, oh God, just the, I don't even think you can put into words what it's like when your father approaches you sexually when you're 12 years old. It's just, and I understand now, really deeply in the Me Too movement, they keep on asking these people, why didn't you say anything? And when that kind of energy is coming at you, you freeze because it's not about sex, it's about power. So I stuffed all this stuff inside. And my main experience of life was dread. Dread is the experience of, oh my God, something really bad is coming down the pike. And it's happening because I did something wrong. So I began to be shown by life the power of investigation. And the seeing is the movement. You don't need to fix anything. And then I still struggled a lot because it wasn't taught with great heart. And then I had the grace to meet and spend a lot of time with a man called Stephen Levine, who wrote many books on death and dying, but really, truly wrote and did workshops on being fully alive. And he has one of the most aware hearts that I've ever met on this planet. And he brought me back to my heart. And so as I was developing the muscle of my curiosity, and as it became safe for my heart to open again, I began to be able to braille my way into fear, not terror, fear. Oh my God, I began to do the most amazing work on this extremely cruel self-judger that I carried. I mean, just, nobody else was as cruel with me as I was with me. As I developed this capacity to turn towards and be with myself, I can still remember this night. I don't remember what was happening in my life, but I was woken up in the middle of the night and there was the dread. And it's this really yucky feeling in the pit of your stomach. And my first thought was, I'm going to go eat. Because that's what I had been trained to do, to turn away. And I said to that part, thank you, and we can go eat, if you want to. But that doesn't help this feeling of dread. It's going to come back again at some time. Why don't we just you only have to do a few moments. Let's go and be curious. And we use our bodies a lot, in this process where, if you start trying to be curious about your feelings or your stories in your head, you can get really wished away. But all of that that is holding, all of that that you are trying to get away from with your compulsions, shows up as tightness in your body. So it was almost like, well, okay, okay, I'll spend just a few minutes going towards this experience. So I brought my attention, into that place, in the pit of my stomach. And we always begin with just describing it to ourselves. Because if we don't learn that, then the mind is going to try to go there and make something happen, because that's how you've lived your whole life. I got to fix this. I got to get rid of it, rise above it, whatever. And so we begin to explore. How big is it? How does it move around? Is it right on the surface of my body? Does it go deep in? Does it have definite boundaries, or do the boundaries move around? Does it come and go, or is it steady? I want you to get the sense of, we're using those questions to invite the power of your own attention to be present for what is holding on, what is hurting inside of you. And this was the first time that I really saw the depth of the power of attention. As soon as I brought my attention there and began to, be curious about the physical sensations, this whole ball, tightly held ball of feelings, it just opened up like a flower. And I was filled with joy. That was the first time that I had been cultivating the ability to pay attention. I've been cultivating opening my heart, which we'll be exploring probably next week. But they came together because as my attention rests there, my heart opened. I saw how scared this part of me had been my whole life. And when it received that accepting light of my own attention, it let go. And I want to say that again, because this is such an important part of this work. We're not making anything let go. We are giving it the light of our attention so it can let go. And of course, then life put me in many other situations to help me see all the other places that I had learned to hold on and learned to resist and learned how to disown inside of me. And slowly and surely, my compulsions weren't interesting anymore. And now, I think I said this last week, oh my God, I just eat whatever I want now. And what I want is a live, healthy food. And I keep my refrigerator stocked. And I think I talked about the chocolate bar, that I keep a very fine European bittersweet chocolate bar in my cupboard at all times. And if you would have told me that that chocolate bar sometimes stays there for weeks on end, if you would have told me that 20, 25 years ago, I would have laughed hysterically. I would have said the chocolate bar would have been eaten by the time I got home from the grocery store. But as I learned how to bring the light of my accepting attention into my immediate experience, I no longer needed my compulsions. And at times, life pushes us all, and sometimes I'm more interested than just having a piece of chocolate. That's when I know there's something inside of me that needs me. And that's when I go exploring. So, what do I mean about having your attention and your immediate experience together? So again, I want you to close your eyes and just shake your hand. Just really just get going for the gusto here. Just really shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, okay? Now, stop shaking and just feel your hand. Describe it to yourself. Tingles, energy, aliveness. Where do you feel that the most? The top of your hand? The bottom of your hand? in your fingers, in mainly your palm. Watch as it fades. Allow your attention to become even more fascinated. Can you feel the tingles in your baby finger? Is that different than the tingles in your thumb? Just curious about your hand. Now, as the tingles fade, open your eyes and see your hand. Here is this exquisite creation by life. It took it a long time to figure out how to do this. You have been given this gift of a hand, and it has done so much for you in your life. Really see it. Start with the colors. Can you see the different areas? Maybe areas that are white, maybe areas that are red, creamy, black. Just be fascinated by this hand that has done so much for you. Maybe turn your hand over and look at the other side. What can you notice about this hand? Can you see the play of shadow and light? Can you see maybe how different nails have different colors? A little bit different shapes. Be interested by the wrinkles. It's almost like artwork. And see what else you can discover about this hand. And if your mind doesn't want to do this, just notice. Don't judge your mind. Don't force it. Just notice, oh, my mind doesn't want to be present for my hand. No force here. Now let your hand go and bring your attention into the sounds around you. Begin to listen to the music of your own life. Of course, the main music right now is the sound of my voice. But as I stop talking, there will be sounds very far away, maybe like an airplane overhead. And there'll be sounds very close, like maybe even your breath or the furnace going on. There will be sounds in the other parts of the house or sounds of the birds outside. For the next minute, I invite you to listen to your own life and, if need be, count how many different sounds you hear. And now let go of focusing on the sounds. Just notice at least one rising and falling of your breath. And then open your eyes. If you watched carefully, you will hear a sound, maybe two, and then the mind will comment on something, pulling you back into its world, the world of thinking about life. And then, okay, another sound, okay, you acknowledge that sound, count that sound, but then the mind takes over again. That's why all those men kept on buzzing themselves with the shock buzzer, because they couldn't be here for life. And so what I invite you to do, and then I want to turn it over for questions now, or ahas, or experiences, that to develop the muscle of your attention. It's such an essential part of this work, because if you try to take this work into some deep feeling that's showing up, you'll just get lost in it, and it will actually seem to amplify it. Somebody sent a question about that. I'm remembering now that, what do you do? It seems to amplify what I'm experiencing. You're not amplifying it. All you're doing is taking away all the filters so that you are actually experiencing what you are actually experiencing. And we need to develop this muscle so that you can stay there, so you can be present. So this week, I don't want you to take this into your compulsions at all. I want you just to give yourself the gift of at least 5 minutes a day, that you sit down and you choose a focus. There's 2 that we worked with today. Well, actually 3, but I think, the actual exploring, our sensations, but I think we'll wait for that. But the 2 that may be skillful to work with is, number 1, listening to sounds. It's so powerful because you can begin to see that 2 things, 2 really powerful things, that all the while you're up in your head trying to do life is happening. And believe you me, this is what you long for. We are homesick for life. But you also begin to see how much you have been trained to just think about life. So you decide to listen to the sounds, and you're sitting on your porch and you're counting all the different sounds, and all of a sudden, a car goes by and you go, oh my God, I had an appointment yesterday for an oil change and I totally forgot this. And oh my God, I can't go back to that place. They won't like me, and on you go. You have now again left life for your conversation about life. The key is not to judge that. You've only lived in thought for most of your life. And so the key is just to say, oh, story, and then bring your attention back right here to the sounds again. Or you can do this same thing with your breath. And then next week, we'll start building on this ability of your strengthening curiosity, your strengthening ability to not always try to control, understand, analyze, figure out, fix, rise above, get rid of, but actually your ability to investigate. And, having had the good grace to spend, a lot of time with Stephen Levine, he is now passed, last year. But we would be, he would come to Seattle and, there'd be 600 people, and it was like hanging around your coffee table with all these people that were willing to be real, and watching Stephen invite them to investigate, because he learned, having walked through the dying process with thousands and thousands of people, that most people reacted to the dying process because they had reacted their whole lives. And people that learned how to investigate, how to actually be present for what they were experiencing, their death became a healing. So hopefully I've intrigued you deeply in the power of curiosity. You know, I was a part-time meditator for many years, and then and Stephen said to me, if you sit for an hour and bring your attention back to your focus one time in an hour, that's time well spent. So don't let your mind make this a have to, and, you know, how am I doing? And oh my God, I spent the whole 5 minutes wandering. So it is so powerful to hold the intention to give yourself that gift, and then to begin to see what happens. Maybe your mind the whole week can't do it, but that's an important piece of information. The mind is afraid to be here. Or you sit for, 30 seconds, and then all of a sudden your mind is off to the races, and it's not until 5 minutes later that you remember, oh my God, that's right, I was paying attention to the sounds. No judgment, no judgment. You've only been tumbling from one thought to another for most of your life. And so when you notice you're gone, say story, and then bring your attention back. So let's see, is there anybody that has any questions, any ahas, or any experiences that you would like to share? And either do it through the participants button so you can talk, or through the chat button so you can write. And as we're waiting to see if anything arises, because you just ask yourself, is there anything inside of me that wants to be heard? And as we're waiting, Stephen would say, there's no such thing as patiently waiting. You know, waiting is not patient. We just relax into our breath again. Oh. Oh. So let us, Laura, hello.
Hello.
Hi. So what is it that you would like to share?
I would just like to share that the hand experience was so profound.
Yeah.
It brought tears to my eyes.
Yes. Yeah.
I work with my hands, and I don't stop to feel gratitude for them.
Yeah.
So thank you for that experience.
Yeah. And to actually see them, to actually appreciate them. You know, we're homesick for that. We are. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And is there anything else that wants to be heard or explored? So just come back to your breath, and we'll come full circle. Just notice what's happening in your belly. As you close your eyes and check in, you're dipping the finger of your attention into the river of your experience. So Denver, hello.
Hi, Mary. Hi, everyone. Something that you said has been really resonating with me about practicing your attention, but you said it last week about sort of the lion, and this week about sort of exploring these deep emotions. And as I've been practicing this, you know, I haven't been able to park that. It actually has just come up for me, a lot of these deeper emotions. So
Yeah.
as we go through this practice, I know we're getting more into it next week. But instead of controlling things or trying to park things, things are just naturally coming up for me.
Right.
As I'm just creating space for things to come up.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So I'm just curious, and it's pretty intense, so
Yeah.
I do feel like I'm fighting a lion sometimes. So
absolutely. Absolutely. We had to stuff this stuff in order to survive when we were young. And the mind got aligned with the idea that all of this is monsters. All of this is not okay. And if we open to them, we will die. It happens at that level. And so as much as possible, two things. When you can, stay with your physical experience. Really keep on grounding in your physical experience. And when you find that you've reached your limit, and it may be like 5 seconds, or it may be 2 minutes, then go physically move the energy. Go run around the block or do, jumping jacks or something like that. Because if we stay with it too long, and we just got to feel that. We can feel that place where things are starting to tighten around being present for something. Then the mind starts, we get up in here, we go back to the survival system and we go crazy. So I don't know what I would have done without historical novels. So that's my way of, when I've explored and I've reached the limit of my ability to be present, and remember, we're strengthening it over time. We will come to a time that whatever arises can pass right through you. But right now, everything is geared in our minds to try to contain this. So acknowledge it when you can, but then have a healthy distraction, like going for a run or reading a novel or calling a friend, something along that line. So does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. We don't want to go too fast. We really don't want to go too fast. This is why when I self-published The Gift of Our Compulsions, I put the tortoise and the hare in there 3 times. Slow and steady is how we unfold this. So thank you, Denver.
Thank you.
And much to our dismay, we found out that that my publisher, New World Library, hadn't done a new run of books. And so Mary Sue, who is my business partner, she went and checked online. You can buy The Gift of Our Compulsions for $55 on Amazon, something along that line. So if you want the book, they did email us the other day, and they did say that this is, that they are finishing another run and they'll get it to Amazon, but I don't know how long that's going to take. So we do have a number of books here. So you can go on my website and order it from there, or you can wait and order it from Amazon. So this is from Bonnie. Just finished a Bright Line eating program, which did not help at all. Wondering why so many people can be successful being rigidly controlled, but I cannot. Oh, Bonnie, I'm so glad you can't. Because there is a phase in all of our lives that we can attempt to control our compulsions. And oftentimes, at the beginning, that really does work. But, and you can't haul off and hit me because you're not in the room with me. But it's really a wonderful thing that you can't control it, because life is saying you are ready to be healed, not to just control your compulsions. So does that make sense? What she said at the very end is trying to be rigid with my eating only makes it worse. So what that says is you're ready for the deep healing. So I can't see where you are. I want, let me click this off and let's see. Laura, yes. So, no, that was Bonnie. Bonnie, where are you? Oh, Bonnie, shake your head if that makes sense. Yeah, okay. That yippee, you know, it can control promises that if you just do it right, and if you don't, you're a failure. Well, we have just shifted that. Hey, hallelujah. So thank you for that question. Okay, one and all, I think we're over time now. So thank you all. See if you're willing to, strengthen the muscle of your attention this week. And then next week, we will continue our exploration into dipping the finger of our attention into the river of our experience. So our energy that was so alive and free-flowing when we were young, and that has gotten so bound up by that top layer trying to control the second layer. So our energy can flow freely again, and we can know the joy of being alive, and we can live from the bottom layer. Thank you all. See you again next week. Bye. Bye. For all the children of the world, I say thank you for your willingness to come back to yourself and to life. Bye.